Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. In our study of history, let's explore one of the most beloved and impactful presidents in the American story and one of the most titanic political figures of the 20th century. This man was a champion of conservative values and morality, spearheading the idea of American exceptionalism and setting a new standard for pro-life, pro-family, and pro-American leadership in the Oval Office. He was a larger-than-life figure who had acted on television as a young man, actually, and also survived an assassination attempt later in life. Let's discover the 40th President of the United States, Ronald Reagan. Now, Reagan was one of the oldest presidents in the Union, but he maintained a youthful spirit and charisma throughout his life. He was born in 1911 in Illinois and grew to relative fame as a young man for his talent as an actor, which I mentioned earlier. Married twice, he wed his second wife Nancy in 1952, and the two enjoyed a long marriage for nearly 60 years. He gained notoriety as a politician in the 60s when he became governor of California. Now, it's curious, as we think about it in the 20th century, to think of a man as conservative as Reagan in leadership of one of the most liberal states in the Union today, but he excelled, and this role catapulted Reagan into the running for president in 1980 against the wildly unpopular Jimmy Carter. With his charisma, charm, and most important, a follow-through on his word, Reagan handily won the presidential election in 1980 and again in 1984 on the Republican ticket, serving as commander-in-chief for the majority of the decade. Now, after surviving an assassination attempt in which he was shot in the chest, as I said earlier, Reagan roared into the presidency. He was famous in his 8 years for his brilliant leadership of the American people into an era of relative economic prosperity based in foundational capitalism. Now, equally as famous as this was his global leadership. Serving alongside his global ally Margaret Thatcher, Reagan was instrumental in the downfall of the Soviet Union, which had stood looming over the free Western world as the mortal enemy of democracy since the 1940s. He worked with the Soviets to institute a nuclear truce while helping the Soviet Union to tear down the Berlin Wall, the symbol of communist dictatorship, as a call to abandon the insidious governmental structure that had dominated Eastern Europe. Only 3 years after he left the Oval Office, the Berlin Wall and the Soviet Union with it fell. Reagan spent his remaining days after his time in office beloved and respected by the American people as a man who valued the foundational ideals of faith and freedom. He lived until the age of 93, passing away in 2004 after nearly 2 decades battling with Alzheimer's disease. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.